time guys, if I'm back again with another video, and in this video what we are going to be looking at is dynamic VLookups and dynamic pivot tables. Now these two topics will be the VLookup and pivot tables. We have done videos in the past on those topics, so I urge you to just go back and look at those if there's any confusion. But let's go ahead and see what we can do with them. First off, the dynamic VLookup. Now this is a compressed version of a sheet that we have used earlier. Also, I've deleted some of the columns which I did not need for this particular tutorial, and basically this is a sales ledger of a company that provides fast food items to fast food restaurants and pizza parlors in the New York area. And this is basically the sales ledger. It tells you what dealer the sale went through, what product was bought, the date the order was placed, the value of the order, what the order cost the company supplying it, salesperson, sales area. Okay, now let's see if I'm just going to highlight these explain just a bit. What I've done is I've gone ahead and copied these headings up here. Now what we need to do is I am going to select at random 49 pizza. I'm just going to copy this guy here. Now what we need to do is we need to figure out what product was bought by 49th Street Pizza, what the order date was, what the revenue was, and what the cost of goods sold was. Okay, like we have shown in the previous video, we'll go ahead and use the VLookup formula. So VLookup, this guy here, and we are looking at the product. So we highlight all that, and column number 2, and false meaning an exact match. Okay, so 49th Street Pizza had ordered a pizza. Okay, now the order date is 24th of March 2013. So let's try and put that up here also. So we use VLookup. Oops. VLookup, this guy here, comma, the order date, and this is 1, 2, 3, third column over, and false. I'm just going to go ahead and format this so instead of showing a number, it actually shows in a date format. And since these two are going to be in terms of money, so let's make that into a number and use a thousand separator so it's easier to read and no decimal places. Okay, so 49th Street Pizza ordered a pizza on the 24th of March. The revenue, again we do a VLookup, and the revenue is 1, 2, 3, 4 columns over, and false meaning an exact match. So the revenue for this order was $703,940, and let's also go ahead and grab the cost of goods sold. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this is the 5th column. Okay, so you've got that. Now 541, 492. So that's got here. Now the problem with this is, if you notice, and I'm just going to click on that, so it highlights the range that's been covered by this formula. Is up to this point here, up to line number 43. Okay, now supposing you were to insert a line here, let's go ahead and do that. It's test dealer and ordered a pizza sauce. The order was placed today, worth $250,000, which cost us $150,000. Now if I were to change this to test dealer, it doesn't work. And why it doesn't work is because the new line that we just inserted is not covered by this formula. So one way to do this is, if you see how you normally in Excel, your cursor is like a fat plus positive sign. If you move it over here and just where I see this a bold box here, if you move it over here, it turns into a double arrow. Click and hold down the left mouse button and drag it down. Now essentially what you're doing is it covers the formula also. So instead of just C43, it's going down to C44. And if I let go and hit enter, now you see, now the formula was able to pull up. The difference, if you notice, this is line number 43. These are all the line number 43, and these are not working because these are beyond the line that was defined. Now, one way to do it, like I said, to read the formula if you need to, but hey, you can do it once or twice. But if you're gonna keep adding lines, it's gonna get pretty tiresome very quickly. So there's a different way of doing this, and let me show you. But before I do that, I'm gonna go ahead and there you go. Delete this extra line that you added, because we'll go ahead and add that back in, and I'll show you how that works. And I'm going to leave this the way it is, and I'm just going to pull this heading down here, make another copy of the headings, and we'll put new version of the formulas here. Now, one thing that we can do is there's something called a table in Excel. Essentially what it does is it makes this like a sheet like this with rows and columns and headings, a ledger like this, into a logical table. Okay, and the way you convert this into a table is click anywhere on this ledger. Now, the way Excel is going to figure out that what the boundaries of this table is, it is need to be surrounded by blank cells. So this is all blank. This is all blank. This is all blank, and on this side here. Okay, so these blank cells is what defines the blank rows and columns define the boundaries. So now I'm going to click anywhere in the middle of this sheet, in the middle of this table here. Hold down the control key and hit T for table. And it's saying, where is the data for your table? It's from B2 all the way down to H43. Click OK. Alright, and now it's giving you the name of this table 1 by default. So I'm going to make this watch, learn, grow, repeat. Okay, that's what we call this table. Now, what I'm going to do is we'll do the same thing here, and I'm going to pull up the 49th Street Pizza, and this VLookup, I'm just going to do a different version of the same lookup formula. So VLookup. Now what I'm going to do is, if you see how when normally it's a fat plus sign, but if you go on the heading and you just hover just slightly up towards the top of the heading, it changes to a down arrow. And when you do this, the whole column of that table, not all the way down to the Excel sheet, but just off the table, gets highlighted. And we pull across like that. So you notice over here, that's the name of the table, that's the starting column, that's the ending column. And again, normally how you would do with the VLookup, put column number and then false for an exact match, close parenthesis and hit enter, and it's saying value. Okay, now the reason why it's saying that is because we forgot to tell the VLookup what to look for. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a slight correction. See, now it was able to figure out the 49 pizza, ordered a pizza, and I'm going to go ahead and do a similar VLookup for the order date, revenue, and cost of goods sold. So VLookup, I'm not going to make the same mistake again. I'm going to make sure I select this, comma, and I'm going to go here so it just hovers slightly above so it turns into a down arrow, and I'm grabbing the order date, so I come all the way down to the order date. This is column number 3, so column 3, comma, false, enter, and I'm going to go ahead and format this as a date field, and these two guys would be formatted as number cells. There you go. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and grab the revenue. So VLookup, button and pizza, comma, we're looking at the revenue, so we just go here, hover just slightly above, see how the cursor changes to a down arrow, click and hold down and come to the revenue, and that is 1, 2, 3, 4, fourth column over, so 4, comma, false for an exact match. So 49th Street Pizza ordered a pizza on the 24th of March 2013. The order was worth 703,940, and now what we're going to do is grab the cost of goods sold, which should come out to 541,492. So let's see if it does that or not. So VLookup, then Street Pizza, comma, again I'm going to hover just slightly above, go all the way across to cost of goods sold, so that's column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5. 5, comma, false. Alright, so 541,492. Alright, so now what's the real advantage? Now if you remember, we did a test dealer and this method broke because we had to redo the formula every time. But what's the advantage of doing a table? So the advantage is you come to the last cell and you hit tab. It inserts a line. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to fill in test dealer, and as soon as I hit tab or enter over here, this will start working because now this is the 44th line, and should pull everything. Okay, now if I were to make this into a test dealer, it works. Okay, now but then you say, hey, this also is working, but that's working because we have increased lines here. Okay, if we had not increased the lines, then this formula would not have worked. We would have to read, and if we had not made this into a table, we would have to redo this formula every time. So let's enter another test dealer 2. Okay, in fact, let me just do an undo here. Let me just show you something here, that's something interesting. Now because we formatted this as a table, this formula would update itself. See how it increases the number of lines? So either you could do it that way, or you could define it like this. Give the table name, the columns, starting column, ending column, number of columns, and then a false for the exact match, or true for approximate match, the nearest first match. Two ways to do this, but the advantage, that's the real advantage of tables. You don't have to redo the formula every time. You define the table once, and you keep hitting tab to insert a new line, and the formula takes care of itself. Now, let's see what the advantage is if we are doing a pivot table. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this. I'm going to take and I'm going to insert a new sheet and copy the table over. What I've done, I've just paste as value. uh, let me just change this into a date column and these two into a number column with a 1000 separator. Okay, now supposing what we want to do is we want to create a summary. We want to see what was the total worth of pizzas that we sold and what was the cost of goods for those cost of goods sold when we were selling pizzas, and then french fries and then tomato ketchup. Okay, so what we will be doing is we will highlight this, the data, all the cells that have the data in it. Go to insert, and guys, we are about to create a pivot table. Okay, and then I'll the old way, the old traditional way, and then I'll show you how to do this same thing using a table. So go to pivot table. Okay, and we have the product, and we bring this guy here and this guy here. So this tells you, and let me just format this as numbers with 1000 separate, so it's easier to read. 5.7 million is what the french fries order was. The cost was 4.4 million. Pizza was 7.6 million. The cost was 5.8 million. Tomato ketchup was 8.26 million, and the cost was 6.3 million. Okay, now supposing I'm going to add a test dealer, go to my pivot sheet, do a refresh, nothing happens. That's because the pivot is still, the data is still ending up here. It's not taking the extra line. Now, one way you could do this is you go to Analyze, click on Chain Data Source, and instead of 43, line number 43 is where it ends, you include line number 44. So let's just go ahead and make that 44, click OK, and now if you refresh this, now it's showing you the extra line there. It shows blank because if you go back to this line number 44, the product is blank. So let's call it a test product. Oops, sorry. And now let's go back to my pivot table, right click, refresh, it comes there. Okay, but if you notice, what we had to do was we had to click somewhere within the pivot table, go to Analyze, click on Change Data Source, and increase the put in an extra, make sure that the line that we just entered test data, that's also good. So we incremented the row number. Let's go back to this guy here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete. Now let's do the same thing using a table like we did over here. So I'm going to go ahead and this guy is exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to go ahead and use this as a table. So I'm going to highlight, just like when we were doing it doing the VLookup. See, only the table part is highlighted. Let me just in fact delete this last line. Okay, so you see when I click there, the whole column is not getting highlighted, as opposed to if I click here, whole column gets highlighted. Here I'm just clicking on the headers, and only the table is getting highlighted. And I click on Insert, Pivot Table. Okay, and I'm going to click on Product and Revenue and Cost of Goods Sold. And I'm going to reformat these as numbers so it's easier to read. Okay, now I think I've deleted that. Yes, I did. Okay, go back. Let's come back to this table here, and let's insert a line like we did for the VLookup. Click on the last cell, hit Tab. The dealer is test dealer, and he is ordering test product. Okay, now if you go to the pivot table, okay, and fresh, that was the one that we did with this guy here. Now if you were to refresh this table, it shows you this product. Now let's go ahead and create yet another line. So let's call this test dealer number 2 and product number 2. Okay, so let's go to the pivot table sheet, right click, refresh, there you go. And if you see, click on analyze, change source data. What it's showing is just giving the name of the table. It's not defining the rows and the columns. Excel is smart enough to realize because this is a table, has been defined as a table, it know when you just give the name of the table, it figures out what the rows are, what the columns are, what the boundaries are, what the size of the table, which cells are included in the table. It knows everything. So Excel is smart enough to do that. And once again, now the advantage is you don't have to keep going back in this pivot table. You don't have to keep going back and click on the change data source as you had to do here, and you have to keep increasing the line numbers. You redo the range. Here you don't have to do that. Once you have defined this as a table and give it a user-friendly name and use that in when you're using it in pivot tables or in the VLookup formulas, just use the table name, and Excel does everything for you. As the table expands, it expands the formulas for you automatically. As the tables contract, it contracts the formulas for you. So Excel does all the heavy lifting for you, and you don't have to do that yourself. The advantage is, first of all, it cuts down to the amount of work that you have to do. Secondly, it takes the danger out of you forgetting to redo the formulas somewhere. If you have multiple sheets and multiple formulas, you don't, since you no longer have to do the formulas yourself, and there's no danger of you forgetting to do it in a particular place. So that's it for this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, please kindly give it a thumbs up, and if you would like to see more videos like this, please subscribe. Thank you.